So it's Chris and Lisa from Been There, Got Out. Thanks for joining us today for our Facebook Live Q&A, which we do every Thursday at noon. So you probably know this already, but Lisa and I, through Been There, Got Out, offer hope, guidance, and community to people suffering in or struggling to get out of relationships with narcissists and other toxic personality types so that they can find the strength they need to get their sanity back. And we'd love to hear questions in all the different ways that you can reach us, whether it be the Contact Us link on our page. We get tons of stuff through Lisa's work on Instagram. Our email, it's very easy to reach us. We're on Twitter, we're our Facebook page where you already are.
Our website.
Everything. Yeah. So not hard to find us. We love hearing your questions. And if we don't get to yours, if you asked us something, we don't get to it today, we will
get to it next
not get to it next week because we're going to be off next week. We'll be back on April 8th, if I recall the date correctly. Is that right? April 8th.
Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thursday
we'll
is
let
April
you know.
8th.
We'll let you know.
But as usual, we'll be back to our regularly scheduled noon Q&A on that date. So without further ado, oh, and by the way, one last thing. If you're watching live, you can type a question in. We don't get a ton that way, but we'll take a look before we sign off at the end of this. Just in case. So if you have something urgent, you can go ahead and ask it here and we'll check before we sign off. All right, so without further ado, we are never going to get to everything on our list today because we have so many.
I'm guessing 2 questions, maybe.
Yeah.
And that's because when we get a question from you, I like to post it on in our Instagram community where we have so many active people in various stages of these relationships, those still in it, those on the other side, those in the legal system. And so I think rather than just hear what we have to say, which of course we're happy to share all the time, but we really like sharing other people's responses because then you get all different perspectives from people who have been through or are going through the same situation you are.
And it really helps underscore a point that we make all the time, which is, having the loving support of like friends and family and people who care is super important. But if they haven't been through it, there's a unique perspective that people who have also been through it, as Lisa and I have, both of us, we can provide, somebody who's been through it can provide guidance and support, all that stuff, unlike other people who haven't.
Right.
All right?
Yes.
So,
okay. So you asked the first question because I'm going to go on.
The first question is, what are things that a narcissist can't do?
I know.
And I thought this was so interesting because we always talk about, the traits and the behaviors. This is what they do. This is what they do. But I thought this was fascinating. What can't they do?
Yeah. So we know, and many people know who have been involved with narcissists, is that they do a lot of acting because they don't actually feel some of the human emotions that the rest of us do. So they learn how to do things. One thing that they're not good at, I found, or actually feeling it, was holding hands, because it's fake. Hugging, they don't usually like to just show affection, unless it's fake. And I know my ex was an awful kisser. So it's like, I know sometimes people talk about how talented narcissists are in the bedroom, but in my experience, it was an act and it was not a good thing. So anyway, but let me get into some of the responses that we had from people in our community, because there's so many. And the main 2 that we heard, in which we know, is that they're incapable of love or empathy. And so I'll expand on some of the other responses that we got, because a lot of people said love, empathy, empathize. Okay, one person said that they can't help people that don't have anything that gives them a benefit, or they won't to. They won't help people because it's like they're always looking for something.
What's in it for me?
Yeah. Yeah. They can't be authentic, which is like what I just said. They can't show humility. They can't sincerely apologize. I think in one of our other Facebook Lives, I went into detail about the supposed 6-week-long apology letter my ex wrote that was like such a disappointment. They can't own up to bad behavior without justification or retaliation. That is really something. And this was interesting. This came up a couple of times. They can't allow someone space to feel their feelings. And I'll get into that in a couple minutes. And again, with the expectation, they can't just give a gift without the expectation of reciprocation. So it's, again, it centers around like, what do I get? What's in it for me? Another person said they can't admit they're wrong when it doesn't serve them. They can't be respectful, and they can't be honest. They can't ever be trusted.
I love that one.
Yeah.
You know, what can't they do? Be trusted.
I know. And this one touches a little into the one I said before. They can't acknowledge that they hurt someone and that person has the right to be upset about it. That really
That's a
hit
good
home
one.
for me. And this is someone that we've interviewed before. But yeah, they can't, it's like they don't allow you to feel your feelings. Like they try to control everything, including how you feel, and make you feel like you don't have the right to be upset. Someone else, they can't accept any responsibility. And now I'm going to get a bunch into the honesty stuff. So someone said they can't be honest with themselves. They truly believe their lies to be truth. And I think in a recent Facebook Live, I talked about how the last couple of years of my marriage were marked by the theme of denial and delusion. And, you know, we talk about pathological liars a lot, and we did a blog article on it. But what's interesting is sometimes these people actually, I think, believe their lies. And it's bizarre.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
like they create a whole, like they live on a movie set.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's really weird. Okay. Another person said, whoops, this keeps happening. They can't have honest conversations about themselves because they cannot take any criticism. That's a big thing that we talked about that in testing to see if someone is toxic. In the beginning, I think we even did a little video about it like a year or something ago, remember?
Yeah.
About what you can try, a test you can try.
Set a boundary.
Yeah,
I
setting
think
a boundary.
Yeah.
Yeah, but criticism, even anything that they perceive as criticism, like asking them to pick up their dirty socks. You know, that's what I had to deal with. Another person, actually, Tracy Malone, one of our famous people, said that they can't change. She also said they can't be honest, but they can't change, and that's something that a lot of people struggle with, and that's one of the most frequent questions we get is, can my partner change? Because you don't want to let go of that hope.
Especially for people early on who are just figuring out what's going on, right?
Yeah, exactly. Someone else said they can't face up to what damage they have done, among other things. And then another person, you know, we kept going on about they can't tell the truth, and I said, in response to that comment that was posted, I said, you know, again, I do think a lot of them are pathological liars, but weirdly, they occasionally do dribble a little piece of the truth, and it can be so enlightening. It's just that it's hard to tell when what part is really true, but sometimes they will reveal something honest about themselves. And it's really, really confusing because, you know, the little bits of truth they can say, but what about this? This was true. And then again, it's crazy making because you're like,
right.
Well, are they lying? Because they did tell the truth about that. That's part of the manipulation.
And it's interesting how you're just watching you think about this now. You're saying all this other stuff, they were all lies. So you wonder if that one little bit that actually was true. It's making you question that.
Right.
Whereas somebody who's in it, right, who's all spun around like I was, they get dribbled a little bit of truth, and it makes them almost believe they're all the lies.
Yeah.
You know, kind of reverses
That's why they
as
do
you
it.
recover from it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I love what one of your people said, that, you know, what can't they do? And the person said, fool me.
Yes. Yes. That was
So that was really good.
that was one of my favorites.
So somebody
too.
who's out, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you know, just I always find they can't keep their mask on all the time. That was one that, you know, being in a long-term marriage to a narcissist, I saw. It's exhausting to them. They can't always stay in character, and it can look like, well, certainly from my experience, it can look like depression. So my ex would make these big plans for Saturday mornings. We're gonna we're gonna clean the house and then we're gonna go hiking,
Yeah.
all this stuff. And she'd get up and like, make a big breakfast for us, and she'd go back to bed and spend the whole day there. I'm exhausted. It's from the mask, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They can't see the behaviors of others in shades of gray. They only see all good or all bad.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's a really good point.
And going hand in hand with that, they can't they can't criticize, even justifiably, others without labeling the person as generally bad. Right. So this
Yeah.
person did this thing that upset me, and it could be very valid, but therefore they are entirely bad.
Right.
And they might flip around the next day and the person's the greatest person ever, but it goes to, like I said about shades of gray.
Right. The black and white thinking.
Yeah. So they also can't understand that their behaviors have consequences.
Oh,
Right?
great point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or at
I
least-
missed that one.
Yeah. I mean, at least they should have consequences, right? In their intimate relationships, they often train their partners not to hold them accountable, right? So we don't, the people who are their partners don't hold them accountable. And they just behave however they want to and just lie, deflect, and go into their bag of tricks, right? Do whatever later to get out of it. And I think there's so much more we could do. And this one, it could be an entire workshop.
I think so. I think so because we already used
Yeah.
like the half the time I was thinking.
Right. So next one.
All right, next one. Yeah, this was a big one. This was a big one. This one got more responses than I even imagined.
And this was again an Instagram one, right?
Yeah. So we got the question one way, but then I worded it differently. So do you want to read one of how I worded it because it's a little more concise, I thought.
Okay. So Lisa posted on Instagram. Has your validity been questioned when you share experiences about your abuse?
Yeah.
Right? So you tell somebody else who's not in the relationship, a friend, a family member.
Yeah.
And
it was, I was thinking about, and I think I asked, were you believed or were you blamed?
okay.
So many, and I kept thinking about my own experience, people that we've met in real life, people that I've talked to in court, because court had a lot to do with this question as well. A lot of people refer to court. So one person said that she felt like she had been, and now again the question, has your validity, like, are you really telling the truth? And she said she felt like she was questioned by almost everyone who didn't see me go through it or hasn't been through it themselves, which is just typical. Another person said, like, if people don't understand it, then they question it. It adds to that feeling of being the crazy one in the relationship. So basically, when you share your story and you get the same responses or similar responses you got from your partner or ex-partner, it re-traumatizes you because it confirms, like, you must be crazy.
Right.
Because how could this happen? And I think this is why so many people don't want to share their situation, which goes into the next thing by one person who said, no, because I don't share the experience I had. So this person doesn't even want to take a chance, and I don't blame that person. Another person had an interesting thing that dealt with a little bit of religious abuse. She said, yes, ma'am, of course, I was the good girl at church. She did everything right. Her best friend was the girl who questioned everything. And when her husband began physically abusing her, she was the loud-mouthed person she's always been and told everyone. And he was the meek and mild good guy. We know, oh, poor thing. So the elders wrote him letters of reference at the divorce court. And even after he physically tried to kill her, this is so terrifying and so typical. And then the writer said, once I began going through my own stuff, they did the same to me. It was really weird and cultish, and they used God to excuse abuse.
Oh, that's awful.
I've recently seen a few people in our community who focus on religious abuse, and I think I would like to interview somebody about it because it's very common and it's not always talked about as much in the general. Let me turn that off. Sorry.
Very professional.
Yeah. Okay. Another person said, most people didn't believe me because the image he showed the world was a lie. But then I got tired of caring if they knew my side, so I just vanished. and she had a ton of friends. Some were family, and again, an actual entire church congregation that he turned against her. Looking back, it's been about 5 years now, and I don't miss a single one of them. With the little heart. I thought that was great. And then we got into a little discussion about the friends, and then another, a couple of people said, yeah, my friends were his friends, and as soon as this woman kicked him out, he played the victim so well, so he got all the friends, and she doesn't miss any of them, and she has amazing friends now. I know other people were like, I got all the friends, and in my situation, I got the friends too.
Yeah,
because they were my friends.
I remember, and I'll talk about this. We might not get it today, but I'll talk about one of my friends. But I'm thinking of my cousins.
Oh.
I had a group of a family of cousins, 3 sisters, a little bit older than we are, and my ex was kind of friendly with them, and my ex was like horrified when my family members like stayed with me, where I got them in the divorce, and it was just like, they were like, we never liked her all that much.
Yeah.
It was so delusional on her part that my family was gonna.
Right, and I know she also wanted at least one of your college friends.
Yeah, well, that's the other person I was referring to.
Yeah. Okay. Another person said, yeah, I lost friends in the start and family, but the true ones stick around. His entire family dislikes me now. They've only heard my side of everything from him, but honestly, they aren't worth my time and energy, and it wouldn't make me feel any better talking to them. I thought that was a really good point because, so many of us have such need for closure and to set the record straight. I know in court, I myself feel like I need to set the record straight all the time. And, when somebody lies about you or smears you, you feel like, but that's not true. Like, that's so outrageous. And a lot of times it's better for the people that believe to just walk away. It's so hard though. It's really, really hard.
It is.
Yeah. This next person, we've also communicated with in depth before, I think. And she said that her sister said, I thought this was such an excellent response. Her sister said, what is abuse anyway? Nowadays, everyone cries abuse. Her father told her she deserved the treatment her ex gave her because, quote, I knew he liked to drink when I met him. So already, like, the blaming. The icing on the cake, that wasn't the icing on the cake. The icing on the cake was when I defended myself to my own mom and she said, quote, well, if this is how you talk to him, no wonder you're divorced. Yeah. When you see the same people who gaslight, minimize, and abuse you are also in your same narcissistic family, I see, oh my God, Preston.
I know.
I see as the scapegoat why I chose someone who is familiar and not healthy. This is so spot on. My family still wants me to be their rage dump as my ex did. No contact, gray rock, move on, and heal. She also had a therapist told her she had no idea I was abused, and if it was abuse, I should report my beatings to the authorities afterward.
Oh my gosh.
She was, and this is.
Well, we talk about that all the time, right? How the professional therapy, that community, it's very inconsistent. Which of them understands psychological, emotional abuse and toxic personalities, and there are others that I know who are very highly regarded in the community that have no clue.
Yeah. So she said with this therapist, so she should not only report her beatings to the authorities, but she was coming from the standpoint of abuse being only physical and saw nothing wrong with his threats, financial abuse. All right. So this therapist was saying that, all these Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde behaviors, this therapist still believed him over her in couples therapy. I can totally relate, and that's a whole other discussion. Another therapist said that I was codependent and that until I went to Al-Anon, things wouldn't get better. He said he sounded like an angry alcoholic and could be helped with AA, and that if I went to Al-Anon too, I could stop being part of the problem. So much misinformation from people who want you to stay stuck and accept abuse because you don't have 2 black eyes to show for it or think the other person will get better. This is just so powerful. Lundy Bancroft, who we have referenced before, this and many other narcissistic abuse pages show that they don't change They can turn it on and off with or without drugs or alcohol, and they are highly manipulative. So it's difficult to get anyone to believe you. Don't give up. You are not crazy. Thank you so much for that.
That was
incredible,
packed, right?
Yeah,
with
post.
Great.
I
stuff.
told her, I was like, I'm sharing that one. That's really, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much. It's so provocative. Yeah. Another person said that she went to the police, and I hear this constantly.
Mm-hmm.
She went to the police over and over regarding stalking, and they tried to call in a crisis team and have her arrested. But she was calm, and they had no grounds. It depends on what state you're in, because in some states like Colorado, they have to arrest somebody. Yeah, a lot of times we know that abusers are extraordinarily manipulative, and when the police are involved and not as educated as they should be on domestic violence, it's often flipped onto the victim. The victim ends up getting arrested. The victim goes to jail. It's just, I'm not going to say the word I'm thinking of, but it's crazy. It's crazy. Let's see. Another person had an interesting point. She said that regarding whether your validity is questioned, she said this can happen when people stay silent or withdraw from you. That in that way, that also invalidates your experience, because they're like, I don't want to
deal with your drama kind of thing.
Yeah. So, yeah. It's like they're still not supporting you because they're walking away. Another person said, one person I know would always say he thought I was joking. So I was just talking about abuse, or that I was lying. He even told me I needed to learn how to get along with the person who is abusing me.
Oh boy.
Chris is making a face because I will hold my answer and let you respond to what happened to you with that.
Well, I mean, I could think of several examples, but in two cases, it was two different, after we had split up, two different therapists who were acting in a role of co-parenting coordinators, both of whom published authors.
Experts.
One of whom...
Not on domestic violence,
One
though.
of whom even had, the beard and the patches on the tweed jacket. He had everything but a pipe, and we were sitting in his dark wood office, and he was saying, you two should sit together at the kids' events, school plays and sporting events and things like that. And we hear it all the time. I mean, this is a highly regarded, but this is somebody who the court systems suggest you write into your divorce agreement. That this person would be
the
a good
expert, the one to go to, and clearly someone with no background or very little in domestic violence. And I just attended a webinar a couple of days ago that dealt with this. That's saying that there was a focus on how the courts are really not equipped to make these psychological judgments of like what they. I think they said something about this view of like the friendly parent, that you should always be friendly. But when you're dealing with domestic violence, how can you be friendly with someone that's abusing you and often your children? Yeah. It's outrageous to suggest that you get along with them. It's a terrible thing to subject someone to. And it also encourages the continuance of the abuse. Yeah. Because it keeps you enmeshed and allows that person to still have the power and control over you. And if you have a parenting coordinator like that written into your divorce agreement, as you know, that person can always be held over you. Well, we have to go to the parenting coordinator because they're the expert.
And that's what happened in my case until after it was one of the most satisfying post-divorce moments when I finally had over and over said, this isn't working. You don't understand these issues. This is not a normal situation and all that. This person, this therapist, fired us. Yeah. And left, he refuses to work with us. Right. So I have, there's nowhere for my ex to turn to force me to engage in this kind of thing. Yeah. But because it did no good anyway. Right. It just further traumatized me, those sessions and the things he'd say. So that was like, oh, thank goodness.
I know a lot of the statistics that came up in the webinar I attended said that a lot of these court professionals actually make things a lot worse for victims of domestic violence. All right. Anyway, I knew we would go long today, and we're not even done with the second question.
Right. We're stopping with
I
these
know.
two.
Okay. So, all right. So this will be the last one. And this is a woman who said, just because I didn't have bruises or black eyes, I wasn't believed. A doctor actually said to me that they couldn't help me due to my lack of physical evidence. His friends became my friends, so of course they sided with him. My loss were the friends I initially had and lost because of Iris. We're talking about losing friends again. But yes, you know, and that was my thing too. Before, I would never have thought to go to a domestic violence center because in my head I'm like, oh, those are for battered women.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not battered, even though my life had been threatened, I had been strangled. I just felt like, ooh, it's not enough, so I don't want to bother them.
Right.
And
So many people think that,
and
right?
it's so wrong. And that's why now this legislation with coercive control is so important, because there's so many other issues that domestic violence covers, which the general public is not aware of, and victims are not aware of. You know.
Yeah.
So it's all about educating the public.
Yeah, and I just think so. I'll kind of limit mine to just a real quick response, but I think the biggest issue here is that narcissistic behavior is just so strange. Like the way they act is so strange. So people who don't have firsthand experience with it, they find the stories are unbelievable, and we saw that in some of the responses you read, right?
Because it's so irrational too.
Mm-hmm. So if you haven't been through it yourself or haven't previously witnessed something like this happening to someone you're close to, when you hear these crazy stories, your natural question, I understand where it comes from, as awful as it is for the victims to hear this, but why did you tolerate it? Why didn't you leave?
Because but really they're like, how can this be possible?
Right. So they have, on one hand, they're hearing this horror story from you. On the other hand, you've been in the relationship for so long. Why didn't you just leave? And for victims of abuse, that is like fingernails on chalkboard.
Right.
Hearing that question.
And it's not even just being in the relationship. Like, I think about post-separation abuse and legal abuse. I'm in the system. I've been in the system for 7 years. Mm-hmm. And it's outrageous. I have my court orders. He's in contempt. Why haven't I gotten paid? Why have there been no consequences? I don't know what to tell you. That's the legal system. Like, I've been told there is nothing I have not done properly. And yet there's no justice yet. So
absolutely. So we're gonna wrap up.
We're gonna wrap up. We're gonna eat lunch.
We have eat lunch.
And we're gonna see you in a couple of weeks.
All right. Have a good couple of weeks. Please keep the questions coming. We love hearing from you.
Yes.